Coming to you direct from the nerve center of the galaxy's greatest comic. This is the 2000 AD Thrillcast.
Borag Thung Earthlets, and welcome to the latest episode of the 2000 AD Thrillcast Lockdown Tapes. I am your host, as always, Molchar. Thank you for bearing with me last week as I went on a little recreational recharge. It was great to see people respond to the John Wagner interview from 2016. Obviously, it's a few years old, but it gives such an incredible oversight of his career to date. It's, really great stuff, and I'm glad to see people enjoyed it. We're actually going to be pulling the same trick. You know what? It's not a trick this time. Mick Mcmahon is an artist who I personally feel is incredibly undervalued in the comics world. Somebody who's had a profound influence on comic book art, particularly for people coming through in the second and third British invasions into American comics. Somebody who doesn't really get the dues that he is owed. But as the artist on the very first episode of Judge Dredd, and somebody who came to be such a defining artist on the series, you know, his big boot look is something that has really endured in people's imagination. I think it's a good time, an opportunity to revisit the long-form interview we did with him also 4 years ago. So we've spliced the two episodes together and put them into one episode for you this week. I hope you enjoy it. It was, at the time, an incredible privilege and pleasure to be able to interview Mick, who, as I said, is one of the greats. We're going to be back next week with original programming and something a little bit special, so stay tuned and make sure you listen in next week. Don't forget that next week actually we've got a couple of really big issues. First off, we've got the Battle Special. Now, this has been timed to coincide with the Battle of Britain 80th anniversary, and includes work by Garth Ennis, Alex de Campi, Alan Hebden. It's exactly the kind of thing you'd expect to see from something that's plugging into the heritage, the legacy, the name of Battle, which, as you recall from the interview that we did with editor Dave Hunt a little while ago, is one of those comics that has had a profound effect on comics. No battle, no action. No action, no 2000 AD. No 2000 AD, well, no comment. So we're going to be talking with some of the creators on that in a future episode. We've also got the 30th anniversary issue of the Judge Dredd magazine. Now, this is absolutely packed with stuff. I'm going to highlight a couple of series from what promises to be a very special issue. There's Megatropolis by Kenneth, Neimand and Dave Taylor, which is... for those of you who've seen Metropolis, the Fritz Lang movie, it's basically what if Mega City 1 was a Metropolis-style Metropolis. And it's really beautiful artwork from Dave Taylor, one of my all-time favourite artists. There's also Dreadnoughts, which, for those of you who read the Judges series of novellas by Mike Carroll and others, this is a series that plugs into that. And has been in the pipeline for a while, and to be honest with you, couldn't possibly be more relevant than where we are in relation to where we are right now in the world. So those are two series to watch out for. Make sure you get the magazine. It's an absolutely cracking package. Not to mention the first instalment of the 2000 AD Encyclopedia will be included with this. The very first definitive encyclopedia about 2000 AD. So, look forward to diving into that. So, let's crack on and hear from Mick Mcmahon. This interview was from 4 years ago, but it's always a pleasure, and hope you enjoy. See you next week, Earthlets.
Comics in your youth, what were the kind of things? Was it Beezer and Topper and things like that you were reading?
Yeah, especially Beezer, because I don't know, you I suppose like Marvel and DC, you take one against the other. So I was Beezer, but not Topper.
Right.
Topper was a sort of an exotic thing that I knew he's had. But those comics were broadsheet sized. So when I was about 4, my mum, I was going to start school when I was 5, obviously, but Mum thought, well, it'd be a good idea if I learned to read before I went to school.
Yeah.
So she thought, well, I can do it. I know, I'll buy him one of these comics. So I've got this thing called the Beezer in front of me, which is as tall as I am, almost. And there's these pictures of hippos eating Japanese soldiers. And she thinks she's getting me ready for a career as, I don't know, lawyer or doctor or something. But I'm thinking, wow, look, someone's doing that. Someone's doing these drawings. So I started doing drawings. So that's how I started off.
That is something that does crop up an awful lot when I'm talking to creators. Is there's a moment when they're young when they realise that actually there is somebody. These things don't pop into existence. There is somebody who's writing them. There's somebody who's drawing them.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned an example of hippos eating people and stuff like that. Was this an early warping of your imagination by comics?
I think so, yes. But it wasn't helped either. That because where I went to school, primary school, was a Catholic primary school run by nuns in St Albans. And of course, St Albans is Verulamium, Roman Verulamium. And the very first British martyr, St Alban, had his head chopped off on the site of the present abbey.
Yeah.
So quite often, I would be asked to do a drawing for the school or a painting, of St Alban. Well, actually, getting his head chopped off, but and also when it was St Patrick's Day, I'd have to do a painting of a pony and trap going through I don't know, the mountains of Mourne or something. So I was sort of helped a lot actually in primary school because I was given special time to do stuff like that. So
that seems like a very different reaction to a kind of Pat Mills reaction to a Catholic upbringing, whereas for him it was very
they
restriction.
No, I think because I went to secondary school where it had priests,
right,
and they are a different kettle of fish. So they kind of turned me off being a Catholic, probably. But even there, I was sort of given a bit of leeway.
Yeah,
to do sort of art and things because they're always really excited, teachers, to find people who are good at something. So and they want to sort of help you along, I think.
And was there any indication in your mind that this was something that you could make a career out of?
Well, no, not really. It depends what age I suppose I'm talking about. But I mean, I would have had an idea I want to be an artist because you start thinking you are one, really. Because kids would come, are you coming out to play football? No, I'm drawing.
Right.
It's that kind of thing. So, or you go to the pictures or something, and everyone else would come home and start. They want to go out and play, killing each other with swords and things. I'd stay indoors and draw it. So it just takes over, really.
Yeah. You went to art school after.
I did. I went to St Albans Art School for. I did an introductory course. They did a special course for people who sort of showed some talent but didn't have an A level because I'd failed A level art at school.
Oh really?
Oh yeah. And the person there was another person, one of my mates. I did his lino cut for him, and he passed.
So it was an honorary pass.
But anyway, they had a special course to get an A level, and I got that, and then I did the foundation course, and then I went to Chelsea School of Art.
Oh right, okay.
Which was a mistake, really. They did do an illustration course, but they were more Radio Times kind of illustrations,
right?
They're sort of little woodcutty things, or
okay.
I mean, they were well done. I mean, they were good. They were good tutors and things, but it wasn't for me really. So. Was there? I mean, I've heard different experiences from different artists who've been to art school. Was there a sneering tone towards comics there, or did you try to do comics? Well, my interview, the illustration tutor, said that she said, which is, well, I'm a snob. I don't like comics. You know. But it didn't stop me getting in there. So I mean, it wasn't that much of a snob. Perhaps she thought she'd sort of save me from myself.
Yeah.
So, but I did enjoy doing the illustrations. And things, a lot of the time. But when I was at the foundation course, I was actually quite good at painting. I was enjoying that. I suppose I was thinking about being some sort of painter.
Okay.
But I was really put off. You have to have. It's not good enough to just do a painting now. You have to have a manifesto or something. You know that you have to be able to explain why you've done it.
Right.
I think, well, if I could explain it, I wouldn't need to paint it. So,
but the stuff that you learned at art school, did that stand you in good stead for things like when you came to produce stuff in colour?
No, it didn't. I mean, that's why it was a mistake, because there was a college at Watford, Cassio College. They did a art course, but that was all about learning how to use materials.
Right.
And I was at 3 years at Chelsea School of Art, and I was never once taught how to use anything. It was all, start from scratch with everything.
Right.
So I wasn't that impressed with that, really, because I thought that's what you would learn,
Yeah.
But you were just left to your own devices, because I think they were more like on the fine art kind of side of it.
Yeah.
But it was worth it doing it, really, though, because it gives you like some time to just keep practicing. Because I'm sure I couldn't have got any work. I was 16. I suppose I could get a job in a comics company, but there are only two. So.
Well, you came out of art school and went to straight to Battle Picture Weekly to see if they.
Yeah, it's Battle Picture Library.
Library, yeah.
And it was Mr. Bensberg. I can't remember his first name. Was it Ben? I think. Anyway, Mr. Bensberg, but he liked what I'd shown him, but he said he wasn't quite ready, and then he showed me some real artwork, which just brought me out in a cold sweat. But they sent me around to Temple Art Agency, who took me on their books, and they got me some work on because DC Thompson were going to do a science fiction comic when they heard of. Obviously, it got wind that 2000 AD was going to be started. So I did a couple of things for that I wrote. They were awful. I mean, they really were awful.
Please tell me these things still exist.
Well, I haven't got them.
Oh, right, okay.
Mind you, DC Thompson keep everything, doesn't they? It's probably in their vault. So.
In their vast comics vault,
yes. But then I'd started to read, because Smiths had started selling Warren magazines.
Oh, yeah.
They'd started doing a UK edition. So, and there's all these really great Spanish artists that I'd never seen before. And also Paul Neri was in there, and he was doing this science fiction thing. And I was really taken with the way he was doing it. So I thought, I'll have a go at drawing like that. And of course it wasn't anything like that. But I did this thing in pencil about an old knight riding around on his horse.
Yeah.
And that's what they showed to Pat Mills. And he saw that and said I could draw Judge Dredd.
Okay.
It was only 6 pages in pencil, but
there was still that desire to work in comics. You came out of art school.
Oh, yeah.
They hadn't burnt it out of you.
I was going to be. I mean, I remember I went for an interview at a photographic place in Welwyn Garden City. Right. They were looking for someone to do paste up work.
Yeah.
And I told the woman there, I said, well, I'm not really interested in paste up work. I want to do a comic. She says, well, you'd be better off trying to do that. She said, you're still young,
Yeah.
She said, you haven't got a mortgage, have you? I said, no. She said, well, don't come and work here then. So.
Well, what was it? Comic book artists don't tend to work with agencies these days. What was it like working with an agency? Was it a close relationship, or was it just you were on their books and so?
No, just on their books. I used to see them occasionally. And, I mean, they were nice, friendly people. And because Don Lawrence was on their books, and quite Ramon Sola was on their books. Yeah. But after a while, when you start delivering the work yourself, you think, well, why have I got an agent? But I did stick with them until I got sick, and then I just stopped.
Right.
Because I wasn't doing any work. So, but when I started up again, I think they'd gone out of business.
Right. So. Right. Okay. So Pat Mills, 2000 AD, Judge Dredd. Now, when I've interviewed you before, you've mentioned how you were separated from kind of day-to-day machinations of 2000 AD and the office gossip and everything. We sort of blissfully unaware of what was going on with the various kind of scripts being brought forward and then dropped back and
No, I didn't know anything about that.
Right,
I was just given a script and I'd draw it.
Right.
Because I was so unaware. I mean, I used to think Kelvin Gosnell was the editor because he dressed smart and had a pipe. So. And it was well after I obviously found out what was really going on. But I think because there was at one point the management wanted me off the comic.
Right.
I only found that out much later, but that was when Pat gave me an annual story. He didn't tell me why.
Right.
And I think because he'd parked me for a while until the heat.
I mean, was that fairly early on? Was 2008 being published already, or?
I'm not sure. It must have been out for a while, I think. But that was very early on. I mean, I think it was about the 4th or 5th Street. Yeah, it probably was now, actually.
Okay. And of course, the first strip, the first Judge Dredd strip to be published was your artwork, but with a photostat from Carlos's bank job put on the front page. You had to redo that first page a few times. The view of the
it was terrible.
Empire State Building.
I'm still not very good at drawing buildings. It was the nightmare, really. I can't believe they put up with it, really. It was I think Jan had to sort of retouch so many things.
Oh, Jan Shepherd?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
She was fixing things. I mean, I remember there was one Judge Giant.
Yeah.
I think the story had his dad in it or something. Pappy, I think it was quite.
Yeah.
But she'd when I got the artwork eventually years later, she'd gone to town in it. I think sort of whiting out, fixing Pappy.
Whiting out his face, or
his face, redrawn his face.
Wow. Okay.
Because I think, I suppose they do that anyway. They don't know who you are. But, it's a good job they did. It was a terrible drawing. So.
But not changing his ethnicity.
Oh no, nothing like that. No,
Right,
it was just because I was trying to draw an old man.
Right.
I wasn't doing it very well.
Because you were asked to imitate Carlos's style in those early days, and I remember reading there was a quote from you where you said you couldn't believe that somebody couldn't tell the difference between your Carlos and Carlos's Carlos.
Yeah, because he can draw. Well, that's different, and really, I mean, I was trying to imitate, and the first two, I think I sort of pulled it off, sort of. But only in terms of the way he was laying out pages and things. But the actual drawing, I mean, there's no comparison. When he had a lovely fluid, easy style, and I was really forcing it. So.
But how old were you by this point?
22.
22. Yeah. I mean, asking a 22 relatively untested artist to mimic the style of somebody who's already been working for 20 odd years in the industry, that's quite a tall order. What did you think of that instruction to draw like Carlos?
Well, I was quite happy to do it, really. Right. I thought, well, I can work here in this comic.
Yeah.
So, because I hadn't done anything really for a year after I left art school.
Okay.
So I suppose it wasn't like I was desperate, but it was I could see it was a good story and a good character. So. And I knew really I wouldn't carry on drawing it like Carlos or trying to draw it like Carlos. So that's I didn't have any objection to it at all.
Did you have a sense that 2000 AD was going to be something special, that it was going to do well? It was just a job that you had.
Well, it wasn't just a job. I mean, I thought it was going to be a good comic, but I mean, whether it be a successful comic, I had no idea. Because I mean, there are lots of things I've liked, comics I've liked that have lasted, 2 issues. So there's what I like and what's successful are two don't have much relation to each other. Really.
So you did the Judge Whitey story, and you were also responsible for Rico. For the look of Rico, that wonderful mishmash of surgery on his face. Can you remember if that was an editorial thing, or that was it just said make him look ugly?
No, it was like because I think Pat sent a load of notes with that.
Oh, right, okay.
Plenty of reference for that. I mean, it was like whenever Pat would send stuff, he didn't command you to make it look like something definite, like something very particular. But what he wanted was something that had the flavour of what he wanted, and I think that's probably what happened with that. But that was I remember it was took quite a long time, I think, to figure all that stuff out. So, but looking at it now, I mean, it's just like it shouldn't take longer than about 20 minutes. Really, but it's was that with the fourth story? Was that?
No, Rico was Prague 30 something.
Was it?
I think.
Right. I get confused. I tend to think of it in chunks. You know, like the first.
Yeah.
Up to something like, I don't know, brain blooms or something, and then it's sort of vague bit, and then it's Curse of the Earth. So.
Well, just picking up on something you said there, you described Pat Mills as the best editor you've ever worked with. Why was that?
Because he was hands-on, really.
Right,
He was enthusiastically got you to do things rather than wait for you to do something and then said, "Oh, you'd have to change it."
Right.
You know, so you more or less getting it right first time because you wanted him to be happy with it.
Yeah.
You know,
but that's interesting because a lot of the artists that I've talked to have preferred their editors to be very hands off. But I guess his enthusiasm is or was infectious.
Well, there's two ways of looking at it, really. I mean, most editors are hands off, but for me, that means I start drifting along. You know, it's like, and things don't get done on time.
Yeah.
And so, but if you've got an editor who's when you get a script from them, it's full of notes and stuff, then you feel like it all matters. You know, it's like it's got to be done. It's like working at the coal face. So.
I guess you were pleased at the time with getting so much work because I mean certainly that first couple of years of 2000 AD is full of your stuff because you know you've not just got things like the Return of Rico, you got Robot Wars, you got Cursed Earth, there's the Judge Child Quest, the Day the Law Died, all of this stuff. Your artwork there is ubiquitous in that phase. So I guess you were just very happy that the work kept flowing.
Yeah, it was great. Well, it was. I mean, you guys get. I mean, if you get a feeling that they like what you're doing, then it makes it much easier, doesn't it? I mean, that's the other thing about hands off as well, because sometimes you don't really know what they think, and you don't like to say, "Is it any good?" You know, because they'll probably go, "Yeah, it's all right." You know. I don't know.
Well, you mentioned about that you knew your style would differentiate from Carlos's over time. How quickly did that process begin? And was it something that naturally happened or something that you purposefully moved?
It just naturally happened because I couldn't... I just forgot to do it. I mean, the only thing... Because he had that thing, didn't he, where it looked like he'd have lumps and outlines.
Yeah.
And I kept doing that quite a long time, even when the other stuff didn't look anything like Carlos as well. So, and it I suppose it happened. It didn't take that long, I think.
Yeah, it's certainly noticeable. I mean, even to an eye that isn't looking for it, when you get to something like The Day the Law Died, then the sheer difference between the style that Carlos had done, your style, and Brian's as well, was very different. I mean, I was writing a feature about the SJS the other day, and of course hadn't realised that in The Day the Law Died, Brian was doing the SJS uniforms one way, and you developed your own very singular look for them.
Well, that was because there was the coordination was sort of starting to fall apart because I didn't even know you were drawing them. So when I got this, I just drew it because they didn't send me any reference to what he was doing. So, or maybe we were doing them at the same time. I don't know. So, that started happening quite a lot.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think it was because Ron was doing stuff as well. I think so. And I think by that point as well, you got the. It wasn't just the uniforms looked pretty similar, but everything else, the cities and everything looked completely different. And you thought, well, does it really matter anymore? Really. So, because Ron had his skyscrapers.
Yeah.
And what have you. So.
Well, that leads us nicely on to the development of your big boots style. By the time you've got past the Judge, by the time you've got to the Judge Child quest, what most people would identify as the Mick Mcmahon style is there. The big pads, big boots, a skinny Dredd, lots of nice shadows and surfaces and lines and everything. Were you happy with that? Was that where you felt you were happy?
Yeah, on the Judge Child quest, I finally thought I was in control of what I was doing.
Right. Okay.
Well, I thought I wasn't really, but I did think I was, and I was really pleased with it. I mean, there was one. There was the first Angel Gang story, where it's that one starts off with a giant gorilla with his sunglasses, like the one before that.
God, it's been that long since I've.
Yeah, but anyway, that one. I was doing first couple of pages, and I thought this is looking really good. I've never thought that before about something I was doing. I thought this is looking really good. Yeah. And I mean, I don't like it now, but at the time, it's really nice. Occasionally, you think you're working to your full potential. So, because I'd sort of got the right balance then between speed and drawing.
Yeah.
Because before that, I think I was working far too quick. And of course, gone the other way now.
With the Angel Gang, they've got such a distinctive look, like straight out the gate. There's no kind of vagueness to how they appear. What was your inspiration for them? Was it westerns? Was it anything else? Was it direction from the script?
John wrote it as a western, I think.
Yeah.
Because that's what it felt like. So that's. I mean, John didn't give you a lot of reference and stuff, but he used to say quite a lot in the script about what these people should look like, or what sort of character they were. So that made it much easier to design them.
With something like Mean Machine, he and the rest of his family were killed off in the Judge Child quest, but then he's returned again and again and again over the years, and I think that's probably partly to do with just how distinctive and unusual and what an expression of what he is part of his physicality with the dial and the arm and everything. I guess you didn't have any inkling that this would be anything more than a passing character who.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, he was just. At the time when you're doing it, it's the most important character in the world, because otherwise you got to care about it.
Yeah.
Feel for the character, but then when you go on to another character, that one's gone.
Yeah.
It's like, and then the next time you draw him, you think, "Now, why did I make his head so bloody complicated?" So I couldn't keep drawing it. So.
You get a character like Murd the Oppressor. Who's got all that fantastic mad hair everywhere. That must have been a nightmare to...
Well, no, because that was at that point I'd got to the because I had to draw the living planet with its tendrils.
Oh yeah.
And because that's the same story, wasn't it? So I'd drawn the tendrils, and I thought, I'll just do all these lines. No, it's nice. It's like a Friday afternoon job. And that was the same with his hair, because until then I'd felt that probably it wouldn't have sat right with the way I was doing a lot of black. I know it's hard to explain it really, but it would have been the wrong texture.
Okay.
See what I mean? But I think there comes a point where you're getting the right balance between shadows and light and that you can start putting in more sort of grey tones. Like the lines would make a a tone rather than a shadow or something. I don't know.
I mean, was it a challenge to be working in black and white, or is that your...
No, that's what I draw in. Yeah.
Right.
So, well, really, I just draw in pencil. But the black and white inking is much more challenging, obviously, because you can't fudge it. Well, I suppose you can, but not the way I do, because I just do it with a pen. So I don't use splodgy bits of jade cloth or something.
Because your pencils are very clear; they're very strong. Is what you see in pencil is what you get.
Yeah, it's because I think a lot of my early inking on 2000 AD is the pencils were very clear, very sharp, and then I had to ink them very fast. Right. So a lot of that gets just thrown away, But because you've got a basis there to work from, it does sort of hold together.
And in terms of how you were working at the time, I mean, so many artists now are either wholly or partly digital in what they do. But at the time, was it just your pencil, your pen, your Bristol board, a bit of whiteout?
Yeah. It might have a bit of sort of electrotone.
Oh yeah.
Electrotone. If in doubt, that's looking a bit bare. Anyway, let's put some electrotone on it. Or the other rub down texture, instant text.
Oh yes, yeah. And he said quickly reading. You mentioned about how you felt that you'd kept up with kind of how a squarer was laying out pages. Some of the page layouts in things like the Judge Dredd quest. I mean, you mentioned the Living Planet there. I mean, those double page spreads are absolutely huge. Not just in terms of what they portray, but the actual original
physical side.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of work to pour into a single image. Did you pay it any heed, or was this just... I guess you knew no different. This is just what you did, wasn't it?
That's what I did, yeah. I mean, I think everyone did them that size. I mean, that was the size they asked for them to be. Because I remember once Kev, he'd... I think he'd been doing a bit of mowing in his front garden. He got sunburned really badly. Right. And to save a bit of time, he'd drawn one of his pages same size.
Oh, right, okay.
Which was a no-no. Because, I mean, he wasn't paid the full rate for it. So,
really?
Yeah. So
even though he delivered a page of artwork?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was just the size you worked at, Because they are massive, Because I haven't got any of my own pages from back then, but I've got a couple of Kev's Nemesis pages, and they are huge.
Yeah.
And you wonder, how do they reproduce? Yeah, they do.
Yeah. We're reprinting the Cursed Earth Uncensored. We're printing the Cursed Earth Uncensored book this year, and we were very fortunate that one of our fans, Mark Perry.
Mark, yeah. He was around my house in Havers Heath once.
Oh yeah, he lent us the pages of the Burger Wars that you drew. Obviously, those episodes have been effectively banned since they were originally printed. Do you have any memories of Burger Wars? Because McDonald's was only a relatively new thing back then. I think there were only 2 or 3 restaurants in the whole of in the UK. Yeah. Were you aware of these big brands that were coming over at the time?
Vaguely, yes. I mean, I'd actually been to the McDonald's was it in Piccadilly? So
oh right, yeah,
first one. I'd been there. I think the girl I was going out with wanted to go there. We never went there again. But no, I knew who they were. I mean, I'm as full of Americana as everyone else. It's hard not to be. But the stories, I thought, because they were John, weren't they? They were just funny. So it was easy to draw. They're really funny because they were they're very American as well. I thought they were sort of a fundamentalist, sort of fast food chain.
But
which is in fact what they are like really in real life.
Well, yeah, absolutely. They wish to rule us all with the iron fist of burgers.
Because my wife Chris, she used to work with a firm that did a lot of when McDonald's came here first. Her firm made all the buns for them,
right?
And she developed the soft drinks and the cola,
really,
and that. So, but she used to go to the. She didn't attend it, but she had to go there to do a presentation to I think it's the College of Hamburgerology that they had in London. They had a professor of hamburgerology. So,
which sounds like something straight out of the Cursed Earth.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
I think that's what. Yeah, there was certainly a professor of hamburgerology.
Right. I mean, what's it like knowing that these? Finally, after knocking on for 40 years, these strips are finally going to be reprinted.
Well, I don't know really. I mean, it's because I never really understood why they were banned in the first place. To be honest,
twitchy lawyers, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said before, I wasn't really interested in why they were banned. But well, they'll be good if people can see them because they are. I think there's a lot of work in some of them spreads as well. They're big crowd scenes.
Yeah, well, having that double page spread because we're doing a print to go with the special edition from our web shop, and that's a lot of work in that page.
There's another spread as well, isn't there? Isn't it where they're being brought into town?
Yeah.
With Ronald in back of his pickup or something. So there's a lot of people in that as well. But really, when I was drawing those spreads, all that cursed other stuff, really, I was just drawing some World War II American soldiers, really, with might look a bit mutated or something. So. That's how I saw that. I thought it was World War II.
Yeah. Because it does seem like the Cursed Earth is the place where every obsession of British people from the 1970s and early 80s kind of gets distilled down into this. But every assumption about America, every twisted stereotype we get from their media and our media just gets dumped there and dialed up to 11. And it's just this. I mean, it seems that you were having a lot of fun with your episodes of the Cursed Earth. Brian was definitely having a lot of fun with his stuff, and all that seemed to really match Pat and John and Jack Adrian's scripts as well. I mean, was it fun? It seems like an odd question to ask, actually.
Yeah, it was good. It was great fun.
Yeah.
I think as well because it was new to the strip.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do anything you wanted with it, really. Because I mean, I don't know what happens now because I haven't read it for a while. But I mean, I think it still is because it's so big. You can have anything you want. Can't you? Just probably have an oasis of people being nice to each other. You want it.
You got to draw a giant Tyrannosaurus Rex in the middle of a futuristic sci-fi strip.
Did all that? Yeah, that's great. So because that was Pat's famous. Panel description was one of the dinosaurs is leering at the reader, which always goes down well. Hey, look at us! Look what we're doing. You know, don't you wish you were doing it?
Moving on from that, we get to something like Block Mania. Now, we'll talk about what happened with that in a second. But dwelling on your style, you did some annual. Stories around about that time. I think it's the 1982 Judge Dredd annual where the index page is a picture of Dredd and he's flanked by loads of judges on the steps of the Grand Hall of Justice.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
And for my money, that's the first time I really got a sense. I mean, I'm reading this years after it happened, but that's the first time I really got a sense of this. Of Dredd being a kind of totalitarian nightmare, these faceless judges. Your style seemed to really emphasise that because all of them look the same. You know, it's an incredible consistency in the uniforms. What were your feelings towards the character by this point? Because I mean, you did 77 episodes of Judge Dredd between. 1977 and 1981. I think I've got that right. So you've been working on for a while. What were your feelings towards him as a character?
Well, when I first started doing it, he was I thought he was a policeman. He was and he was. I suppose he was a bit violent, but he wasn't that sort of out of the ordinary, really. I didn't think. I mean, he still had his heroic thing, like the Cursed Earth thing. Yeah. He's been heroic, you know. But as it went on, I didn't think he was heroic anymore.
Yeah.
I just thought he was violent and repressive.
Yeah.
But because it's a fantasy, in an amusing way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that picture you're talking about is, I suppose that sums up how I thought he was. That no humour, no ego, just, the law.
Yeah.
So, and that made him much easier to draw, actually.
Oh, really?
Because then he becomes this sort of rigid, sort of solid, no nonsense, nothing flamboyant character. All the other stuff can go crazy, but he will always be just like the core of it all.
Yeah,
being sort of immovable and.
Well, there's those amazing covers you did. The one of Dredd sort of sat back in a chair, like a giant Dredd in a big chair over the city.
Oh, like the Emperor.
Yes, yeah. And one of my personal favourites, which is him sat on the word crime.
Oh yeah,
and he's just blown it to be just any questions.
Yeah.
And you're right. There's such a weight to him. Whereas everything else around him, particularly when you start getting towards the kind of block mania stuff, the way that you draw feet gives people a surprising amount of buoyancy and lightness. But Dredd is always 2 feet on the ground, absolutely solid. So I can see exactly what you're talking about. Yeah,
because he wasn't a character that would, and it wasn't. And it was, to be honest, it wasn't written like that either. Who would do athletic things?
Right.
He'd walk about, he'd ride about, and he'd shoot people. And that's basically what he did. I mean, he didn't do any stunts, did he? Really? I mean, occasionally he might do something, but most of the time he'd just be following on remorselessly, relentlessly, whoever he was chasing.
Because the stature you gave him changed over time as well. Because certainly with something like the Cursed Earth. That wonderful iconic image of him essentially crawling the last few feet towards Mega City 2. He's quite rangy, he's gangly. But then by the time of Block Mania, he's much more solid, much thicker. That kind of ties in with that whole kind of, the faceless
that's right.
slab of a man.
He's got to look solid. And I mean, it was subconscious as well, but... Because I never actually sat down and thought, well, I think he's that. But it's just a response to the development of the character. Because I think I read something the other day, though, about complaining about superhero films, that all they take is their action.
Yeah.
Whereas, just with the point out, the same with Dredd, by then I'd been drawing it for a long time, that these characters have got more characterisation, because they've been around for so long, than anything. Anybody, nothing in TV, not in novels, because they keep living and changing and doing things, and you get to know all these things.
Yeah.
So it's just like someone your attitude changes without you even realising it. I think. Alongside
the way that you draw them as well.
Exactly. Because that's a response to the way you feel about them.
Yeah. So Block Mania was the straw that broke the camel's back to a certain extent. Tell me a bit about what happened after those first few episodes.
Well, it just took me so long to draw. I mean, I thought I'll go broke because I had to. I got to the point. The way I was drawing was I had to draw everything.
Yeah.
Because when I was drawing the Cursed Earth, I could do scribbly.
Yeah.
But by now, I'd got to this point. I was obviously obsessive or something. But I'd doing these crowds, and I'm drawing every face. And I think, well, this is going to take me. God. So I just said, I think it was Richard Burton. I saw him at Comic Mart.
Yeah.
So Richard said, I'm going to stop drawing the story. I can't do it. It's just going to drive me mad.
What was his reaction?
Oh, I would say, don't do this to me. You know. But I didn't. Well, I couldn't carry on doing that.
Because were you slated to do the whole story?
I don't know.
Right.
I have no idea. I mean, I suppose it would have just carried on like it had. You know, I'd do 2 or 3, and then Brian would do some, and Ron. So
because those few episodes are remarkable for the sense of space and you using.
Well, I think that was part of the problem.
Yeah.
Because by now, in my head, the mega city was real.
Right.
This is what happens. It's real now.
Yeah.
I can't just make a thing up anymore. Now it's real, and the characters are real. So I think I'm drawing a film, and I'm struggling to make everyone in it a character and stuff like that. And once you get to that point, you can't carry on. You drive yourself around the bend. So I think
because you're
unless they're going to you're going to pay you loads of money and give you as long as you like. But like I think that is a problem when things become fixed in your head that they do really exist.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't mean in a kind of mad way, but in terms of when you approach this story, you think, this is what it was all like. So
because you always had a very distinctive look for your Mega City 1. And it was always a very consistent look as well. Those wonderful kind of domed mushroom-like buildings,
like pepper pots.
Yeah. Well, it always struck me as quite similar to Carlos's original vision of the idea that the city blooms
all the time. Though I was always still trying to stay faithful to Carlos's vision, because it was his character. So I didn't want to just throw all that away. So I was still trying, although by the end they didn't look anything like colours, but there was still that same flavour to it. I didn't want it to look like New York. It had to have some sort of organic feel to it. Although the way I was drawing things at the end, I think, and if I did it again, I'd probably draw them the same. But they're just not tall enough.
Right.
There's no room for 2 mile high things. And they all look like they're about, 60 feet, 60 stories or something.
Yeah.
But it did have a consistent look I quite liked when I was doing it. And I thought, well, it looks futuristic and it looks reasonable that it might happen.
With this sense of it as a real place and the care that you're taking over it, was the feeling that you'd had previous about actually this looks quite good, had that carried through to this moment, or were you beginning to think, well, actually I need to take this further?
I don't know. I don't think that had anything to do with it at the time. Yeah, I did feel like I was still in control of what I was doing, but I'd also done in that same style, because I hadn't done a lot of work in that style, and I soon gave it up.
Right.
But I'd drawn a story for Doctor Who Monthly. I can't remember what it was now, some Chinese bloke on a river. Anyway, there was one about a Mississippi gambler or something.
Yeah.
I don't know how I ended up drawing that. But I'd drawn that in exactly the same way. But there was something about it that didn't start to repel me.
Right.
Not feel that happy, because I could do it. I could. I suppose maybe it was getting too easy.
Right.
It was a style that I sort of mastered, and it was just I could sense it was going to turn into like a formula or something, which I don't really like. Because I'd already done that a few times before when I was drawing The Day the Lord Died.
Yeah.
That was very formulaic, I thought.
Okay.
Which is why I changed that.
I mean, it's something that we'll come on to when talking about your style, but it does. There's never a sense that you stay still for very long in what you do.
No, there's 3 phases, I suppose. The first phase is when I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm struggling to find out how to do it.
Yeah.
And then we get to a point where I think I know what I'm doing, so then I'm quite happy then. And then it starts, like I said, slide into a kind of formulaic, repetitive thing, which I don't really enjoy. So then it's, because I always find it difficult I start a new character to use the style I was using on the previous character, because it's like, like they don't fit together. I don't know. So it's hard to explain it, but it just doesn't feel right. So I've sort of had a few months of self-flagellation trying to figure out what this new one looks like. So
you went from Dredd to drawing Ro-Busters, which is a very different kettle of fish.
Yeah.
At the time, and it was you and Kev O'Neill, who was still art editor at the time on 2000 AD.
See, that's nothing. I never knew he was the art editor.
Oh, really?
No, I thought he was like because he used to have a little desk round the corner.
Yeah.
So I thought he was. I don't know what thought he was, but I never thought he was the art editor.
Oh, right, okay. But there was a great anecdote that I read, which was you didn't think you moving from something like Dredd to Ro-Busters could have been accomplished without something like the Temple Art Agency, because you went out for a big meal with editorial.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. That's my first experience of a lunch, a business lunch, and it was just talking about anything other than what we were supposed to be there for. And they said, "How did you feel about drawing Ro-Busters?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll do that." And that was it. That was a business bit finished.
Right.
So,
okay.
the only thing I really remember about that, I was told off by the waiter for eating spaghetti with a knife. So.
Actually, while we're on the subject of kind of publishing shindigs, when we were just in the pub, you mentioned
my first Christmas party.
Your first Christmas party.
Faux pas. Or faux pas. No, it was bring a bottle, and I brought a bottle of vodka, and I was talking to, and I still can't remember who I was talking to. I'll find out later. I was thinking.
Yeah.
And he was an artist whose work I'd always really liked, and I was really nervous talking to him, so I kept topping up with plastic cup with vodka, and in the end I'd had so much to drink I just fell over. And I sort of got up and started berating the hat stand. And had to be laid out on the mat on Jack Legrand's desk, the managing editor, and came round a few hours later and joined everyone in the pub for more beer. So. And when I got home, I was mortified. I thought, that's it. I'm out. My career is over. It's official.
Yeah, you didn't know how publishing worked.
No, I didn't actually. Really. So that no one said anything. So it must have been all right.
It's not cropped up in
fact, I think
the memoirs yet.
Because that was actually in the office, that party. And I don't think they ever had one in the office after that.
Right.
So I don't know if that had anything to do with it. Because I suppose it could have been more mess.
So let's talk a bit about Ro-Busters. Like I said, it was a different kettle of fish. It was Pat Mills, amazing, wonderful robot mayhem.
Yeah.
What was it like shifting from drawing all humans to
it was a nightmare.
Really?
A nightmare, because I'd always struggled with the robots in Dredd, to be honest. So why I'd wanted to draw Ro-Busters, I have no idea. Anyway, and of course Kevin was drawing such great, his robots were so great. And I thought, well, I can't just have robots that aren't as great as Kev's. But they never did look as good as his. But it was just really hard to get the robots at first. I think by the end I was sort of got the hang of it. But by then I developed a style that suited it much better as well.
Yeah.
So, but I was enjoying it at the end, but not at the beginning.
How did your style evolve to suit the new conditions of this strip?
Well, Kevin had this thing where he'd draw sort of widgety things with, I don't know if you mean like a machine gun barrel kind of sort of them holes, and he'd be doing these little square dashes and but once you start doing that, you can't then do flowy splashy stuff around it, so that then once you start doing those careful kind of machine things, everything else has to fit in with that.
Right.
So that's why I started drawing everything much more carefully. Although I was still doing it quite quickly, because I actually remember I drew 2 pages in the office one afternoon because it was so late.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I I was penciling them, and I think I can't remember who it was. One of the letterers had to come in, and he was lettering it. And after he lettered it, I'd ink it. And no, I got 2 pages out that way. And because then you think, wow, I've done 2 pages in an afternoon. That means I can do 4 pages a day. That's 20 pages a week. I'm going to be so rich when I have to do all this money. But of course, the next day you're back to your half page.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a few times I had to go into the office to finish things off.
Was that because you hadn't left yourself enough time, or was that?
Yeah. It's usually. Yeah, I mean, but with something like Ro-Busters, it used to take. I mean, it used to take Kevin a long time as well. There's a lot of work if you've got to draw robots, because they've got widgety bits and you've got to learn how to articulate them as well. Because I mean, there was that robot Dr. Feelygood.
Oh yeah.
With his great big arms and things, and you think, well, what does he look like from the side? When you first time you draw it from the side, you think, well, you can spend half a day trying to figure it out, because you've got to make it look right.
Yeah.
I don't mean right in the way that if it was a real thing, it has to look like that, but it's got to look like it works.
Yeah.
Even if it is nothing like what it really looks like if you turn around sideways, but it's got to look like something that is pleasing to the eye, almost, rather than, because there's some characters I've drawn that from certain angles they just look awful. So you don't draw them from those angles. So.
One thing I'm always curious about, the colours on the centre spreads were always bold and vivid and eye-catching. Was that did you do the colour separations for that, or was that somebody in the office who did the colours?
Tom Frame did that.
All right.
Tom Frame, yeah. The ABC Warriors spreads were full colour, so I did those. But every other spread, I think, more or less was coloured by Tom.
Right.
Judge Dredd as well. Because once he berated me. He said, you know that spread you just did? I said, yeah. He says, I was colouring that. He says, I thought I'd do it with the sun, like on the top. And he says, because that's how it looked like you'd done the shadows. And I said, yeah. He says, but of course you hadn't, had you? They're all over the place. Which was true. I just put shadow where I felt like it.
Yeah.
Because in the end, I've given up. I don't really do shadows now. Well, I do them on figures and buildings, but I never do them on the floor.
Right.
I don't know why.
Well, that was one of the really nice panels in Block Mania, was where you've got the big crowd running towards the H wagon, the Manta Tang, or wherever it is, in the centre. Yes. And what little shadow is there is so small and tight. It nonetheless gives an incredible sense of lightness and contrast. And aside from the crowd and the vehicle, everything else is white. But because of that shadow, you don't need to colour in the floor. You don't need to have anything sort of like litter running around or anything, because your eye tells you there's a big floor there.
Yeah, I think what I always do, I still do it as well, is I see when I'm designing a panel, to me it's just shapes. And if you're going to introduce shadows, your shapes are gone. Now you've got bits, unless you're going to use it dramatically, like people's shadow of feet going to the side or something. But so I never draw shadows on anything, under anything.
Yeah,
I might do them under a vehicle.
Yeah,
perhaps, but not.
Well, this is kind of as an aside, because this is later, but something like Batman, when you worked on Legends of the Dark Knight. Shadows are kind of that strict raison d'etre, really, aren't they?
Yes, it's well, I learned my lesson on that one, didn't I? Because the only reason I did that was I wanted to make some money, and I just managed to catch hold of the bandwagon as it was going off the cliff. So I felt, because I mean, lots of people had done one. They thought, "Oh, you're going to get so much money."
Yeah,
I didn't. So.
Well, we'll come on to the American stuff in a bit. Around about this time, you were doing some Doctor Who magazine stuff, because you'd met Dave Gibbons by this point. Who was another St Albans alumni.
I'd known Dave before I worked in 2000.
Oh, did you? All right, okay.
Because there was in the local Hearts Advertiser. There'd been a photograph of Dave in the paper because I lived in a village called Coney Heath, and he lived in a village called London Coney,
Right.
which weren't that far apart. And anyway, he'd done a comic strip for Jethro Tull's album cover. I can't remember, was it Thick as a Brick or something? I don't know which one it was anyway. But there was this photograph of Dave in the local paper talking about working with Jethro Tull.
Yeah.
And of course, being Dave, he said, well, yes, he says, it's a nice job. He says, but I'm a soul boy, so, I don't really listen to that stuff. But, so I'd written him a letter.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I said, dear Mr. Gibbons, I want to be a comic artist too. So anyway, he'd invited me around his house. I brought my stuff around and we got on all right, And so then I'd got that job during Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
And I was on my way to deliver the first one, I think. I think it was the first one.
Yeah.
And I met him on St Albans Station.
Yeah, he mentioned
he was
this.
going for, I think he was going up there to see them as well or something.
Yeah.
Or no, he hadn't actually started on them yet because he had an agent as well, the same as Brian's. And he said, have you heard about this new science fiction comic? And I said, yes, I'm working on it. Mr. Big, Oh, yeah, I know all about that. And but no, so that was really a real coincidence as well.
Right.
So of course, then he started working on it, and we used to go out for a drink every couple of weeks or something up in London. So.
You eventually shared a studio though, didn't you?
I did, yeah. That was in St Albans. That was it was a workshop behind an antiques shop where I don't know what the other fellas in there were doing. They were sort of banging and crashing. I'm not sure they were just fixing antiques, or perhaps they were fixing them. I don't know. So. But that was, it was nice working there. The first night we were there, actually, the woman who ran the shop forgot we were there. We were there, locked up. And it was pitch black and we had to climb over the wall. So, it's right by St Albans Abbey.
Right.
Actually. So, but if someone saw us coming, they thought, there's people who've been nicking stuff in the antique shop.
So we were talking to Dave, and there was he mentioned how you used to lean over each other's shoulders and try and put each other off. So there was there's the famous panel.
He used to which one? The fish.
The fish, yeah.
Fish panel, yeah.
from the day the Lord died, where Cal's holding Judge Fish over his head.
I said I was working too fast in that, and I was just whoosh.
Yeah.
The worst panel ever. It really was shocking. He's held it over me ever since. Certainly can't get too big for your boots.
No, absolutely.
If you've done that.
Absolutely.
But I was big enough to post it on my blog. Here it is, the worst drawing I've ever done.
But you were doing stuff for Doctor Who Monthly in the early 80s.
Yeah. A few bits and pieces.
Yeah, I guess that's a challenge when you're having to render a likeness. It's not like with Dredd where it's your own interpretation.
Well, I had the man there in the studio with me to give me the best advice. He says, Mickey, you can't get it right. You only get it wrong.
Right.
He says, if it looks like him, no one will notice. He says, so that's it. So I thought, well, I might as well. It's not going to look like him anyway, so I'm not worried about it. So.
I remember very vividly one of the stories you did about it was Tom Baker, and he's in the scrapyard and he sees a deactivated
that's the only one I did. Actually.
Oh, right.
I only did the
only one.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Dave was on holiday, so
Right.
So I took up his slack.
I mean, what did you learn anything from working with Dave about page layout or style or anything like that? Did he rub off on you, or did you rub off on him? Or
I don't think so. No, because we're two completely different sort of people in the way we do things. Because Dave's very confident, so he can do sort of a bubbly drawing, like ovals and things, and then somehow he inks it and it looks great, But if I did that, I'd just become a cropper, I have to pencil it really carefully.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I did learn from him as much as I thought, that's what a proper artist works like.
Yeah.
Because he's a consummate professional, which I'm not. So far from it. So at least I knew what I was doing wrong,
Well, I mean, you say that you're not a comics professional, but at this point you've been working in comics for a few years, and had developed your own style, developed your own following as well. Have you always got this sense of never getting beyond a certain point that you're, in your eyes, you're always an amateur and everyone else is a professional?
Yeah. I suppose that thing. I feel like I'm an imposter.
Right. Okay. Oh, right. Imposter syndrome kind of thing.
Yeah. That. Yes, I've done this stuff, but it's not really good, is it? It's like that. It's like I'm not proper.
Right.
Whereas, other people are. Not everyone. I mean, but certainly Dave and Brian, they're proper eyes. And Kevin.
I know several thousand people who probably disagree with you on that one, but no, I mean that's interesting that you went straight from art college to doing 2000 AD. You've made such an imprint on Judge Dredd, on Ro-Busters, on Sláine, and yet in your own eyes, you don't necessarily see the impact that this has had. I mean, do you see the? Do you understand?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, like I said, when I worked in game studios, they're full of people who just poured over my work when they were kids, and that's why they're doing this job, all the rest of it. But what's going on in my head is completely different, because at the time it's a struggle most of the time.
Yeah.
So to me, if I've had to struggle, how can it be any good?
Right, I see. So if it were easier, then that would mean you're good at it.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I mean, because I was looking at some things, some character sketches I've done for a film. I was looking at them today because I was trying to make up a new image to go on my my Windows startup screen. And
such things are life made of. Yeah.
And I was looking at this stuff and I was thinking, I could really draw then. Well, honestly, that's how I felt. I was looking at it, I think, God, that's really good. That I couldn't do that now. And well, maybe I could. I don't know. But I mean, looking at it, it looks far better than what I think I could do now. So.
It's an interesting kind of psychological contrast, because earlier on you said about how you have the three stages of things, and that your work is constantly evolving because you reach that stage where you're not happy with it anymore. But that seems to be fed out of a constant feeling that you're not doing it properly.
Yes, because it's like, well, now I'm starting something new. This time I'm going to get it right. And it for a little while it might feel like that, but then after a while it's not. It's hard to explain. I mean, it is what goes on in my head, though, because I sit and look at things. And I think, oh Christ, what are you doing? What are you doing? Stop.
I mean, that leads us neatly on to talking about Sláine. Because your work on Warrior's Dawn, Beltane Giant, Hero's Blood, Shoggy Beast, Sky Chariots was such a contrast to the stuff you've been doing on Ro-Busters and Judge Dredd. How did you come to develop such a unique style for Sláine?
Well, Sláine, because Sláine was supposed to be Celtic, because I'm really keen on sort of history and stuff, and I'd got loads of books on Celts, and I read Celtic legends and all that stuff, Dark Ages and whatever. And I thought, well, this is something I really love. I'm going to really love drawing this. And so I spent must have been a month just working on the first page.
Wow.
And not because there were probably about 20 first pages, right. But I just couldn't get it right. So I had a vague idea what I wanted it to look like. So what I did was I inked it really quick and then traced that on tracing paper. much more carefully. And it looked okay. So what I would do was that then I'd go up to this print place and they'd dry mount it. I was bored. So. But what happened was, because it was on tracing paper, there's lots of places I hadn't put the black in properly.
Right.
And I thought, oh, that looks good. I thought that looks like kind of Celtic, kind of, like
kind of like a woodcutty kind of thing. Yeah.
So I thought, well, I can do it. But after a while, I was doing it properly. I was drawing on paper, and so drawing on watercolour paper at that time. I stopped using Bristol board and drawing it with these sort of fibre tip pens, which made it sort of much easier to do that sort of drawing.
Yeah.
And in the end, on that, I mean, because I did enjoy doing that, and at the time, I was probably my most successful thing in terms of being happy with it. And I mean, in the end, I could draw. I don't know if you remember the episode where the volcano explodes.
Yeah.
But 2 of the pages in that I drew in one night. Right. I managed to do, and they look pretty good. And also the storytelling in that's very good. I was really pleased with that. But even on that, you can see at the end on that story, Skyship story, the last episode, I think, where the what's it, Slough? Is it Slough?
Oh, Slough Feg.
Slough Feg.
Yeah.
No, it's not Feg. It's the
Is
other
it?
one. I think is it Slough Throt. Let's get our sloughs right. You know?
Listen to us, grown men.
Let's call it Stain. But anyway, even on that one though, you can see I now, especially on the page where he's getting eaten by the worms, it's formulaic by then.
Right. Okay.
I can see. I mean, no one else can see it, but I can see that that's formulaic.
You'd reached that stage.
That's the point now where it's losing its energy, or for me anyway. So,
because I mean, Sky Chariots, just that page where they're fighting. That's full single page where they're fighting and people are tumbling out of the ships and one of them's on fire and just the amount of detail.
It's great. I love doing that. Yeah, that just looks right because I was still. But when I delivered that to my agent, I showed it to him. He looked at it. It's a bit self-indulgent, isn't it?
That's one way of looking at it, I suppose.
Yeah. So, well, you see, to them, it's a business, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, they don't want any fancy Dan people who don't. You know, they want to keep churning stuff out so they get the money.
Wow.
You know, so.
That's.
Although to be fair, I mean, they did have. I mean, they had some really great book illustrators on their books. You know, so we used to work on sort of look and learn and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So they did handle the best people, but I suppose might have been a bit tongue in cheek.
That start, I mean, I remember reading Shoggy Beast when it was in the Best of 2000 AD Monthly, and there's something about it. It's so earthy. It's so deep. I mean, I remember poring over it and trying to work out how you had done it, and trying to replicate it, failing miserably. But there's a weight to it. There's a gravity. There's as you said, it looks old. It looks like an old style, you know. Yeah. And I find it fascinating that comes out of just your method. That was almost.
Well, it's not just a method, because I'm sure that because it's supposed to be. I'm trying to create something that is old.
Yeah.
And so it can't be done with a brush and feathering for me. It can't be done like that because they didn't have brushes and feathering in the dark. You know what?
Yeah.
It can't be like that. So in my own head, it's got to be something that feels iron. You know,
right? Yeah.
Or there are no machines here. You know, everything's held together with string and wood strapped together.
I always like when you did the big standing stones with the kind of Celtic swirls on them. Always loved how they looked as if they'd been hewn out of rock because they were lots of straight edges rather than it being nice and smooth. It looked like somebody had gone in with a bit of granite.
Yeah, chipping away. It was. It was. It had to look like that for me. It couldn't look any other way. So.
I mean, that was kind of that firmly established that period of the late 70s into the sort of mid 80s as like the golden age. That was one of the strips that kind of solidified that in many people's minds. And it's good to know that you've enjoyed it, that you felt it was good. What made you want to move on from 2000 AD at that point?
I don't know really.
Because obviously the British invasion was Dick Giordano and
no, I didn't get involved in that.
Right.
I could have been. I messed that up because Dave, we were going off to London to meet Dick Giordano and who was it? Joe Orlando.
Yeah.
And we went out there together. And Dave said, "It'll be all right as you don't say anything stupid." And I didn't quite say anything stupid, but I think we were talking at cross purposes because they really wanted people to come and draw American superhero comics.
Yeah.
So, and I've never been interested in drawing them. So, I mean, they offered me a book called Warlords, which I didn't do, but was it was a graphic novel. But the artist who did it did such a great job. I thought it was a good job they didn't get me to do it because it looks great. It was beautifully done. Yeah, it's in sort of full colour and stuff. So, but I was going to work with is it Archie Goodwin because I always loved Archie's work, writing, and because I remember once when I was a kid, 11 or 12, I think, whatever it was, but our next door neighbour, he's a kid I didn't really like, I didn't get on with him very much, but for some reason he gave me a copy of Blazing Combat, which from ever since I thought, where the hell did he get it from? He wasn't interested in comics, but anyway, he gave me this Blazing Combat, and I thought, this is the greatest thing ever. Yeah. And there was Archie. Anyway, so I was going to work with Archie, so I phoned him up, and I said, I'd like to do some work. He says, great. So he wrote a script for me. But then I got ill, and I was ill for about 3 years. And by that time, Epic had been folded. So there wasn't anywhere for this script to go. But then I did, that was Epic magazine. But he was still doing Epic comics, so he was doing The Last American. So that's how that came about. But I didn't actually stop working for 2000 AD because I mean I haven't got a career. I don't think it's a career. It's just sort of careering along. Yeah, is it a career?
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, it's because you go to work, you get made an assistant manager. That's a career, isn't it?
That's one kind of career, but I guess ultimately
it's work.
It's work,
yeah,
and you progress and you evolve and you change and you move on.
Yes, I suppose being at school, you've got a careers officer. I don't think they ever say do what I do.
What are you going to be? What are you going to be when you grow up? Going to tell other people what their careers are? Okay.
Well, as was it Howard Chaykin put it? He said, "Yeah, I'm going to dress like a teenager for the rest of my life," and that's what you do.
Yeah.
Someone like Frank Hampson and his suit and tie, I think that's extraordinary. To see people drawing, wearing, dressed to the nines. I don't dress like that when I go to a wedding.
It's the artists of a certain generation. I mean, we talked about Ron Smith in the pub, and it was a job. You were a journeyman, so you dressed as you would for an office job.
Oh yeah,
you were in an office.
It's self-respect as well, wasn't it? In those days, I mean, my dad, he wore a collar and tie. He was a welder, but he used to wear a collar and tie and took it off when he got there. Because he put his boiler suit on. Yeah, but that's how everyone had to do it.
You did work on Legends of the Dark Knight with
Chuck Dixon. I worked twice with Chuck, and I've never had any correspondence with him in the whole of my life.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I did that with him, and I did the Alien Legion with him, and I really liked the Alien Legion. I didn't. But like I said, I did the Batman book for money, and so it was an utter failure, really. So it doesn't motivate me really doing stuff for money. So.
Well, I mean, I think it's notable that when we were talking about when you were a kid and your influences, superheroes never came up.
I used to read them. I used to love reading them, but I never wanted to draw them. So it was weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I used to collect Marvel comics and some DC comics, and I did the thing, this month I'll arrange them in alphabetical order, and next month it'll be all the months comics are in the same, mad stuff you do. So I did all that. Yeah, I used to love reading them, but I never ever wanted to draw them.
Right, that's interesting. Do you feel there was any influence in how you drew from those, or was it?
Well, I suppose there must have been, I suppose. But I always thought that, because I used to read British comics, which was always in black and white, which meant they had to have a lot more drawing in them.
That is one way of putting it, yeah.
Well, when you're a kid, that's how you look at the world. You think, oh, look at all the detail. Whereas in American comics, may look like, well, if there wasn't any colour in it, there's nothing there, is there? Look, it's just, there's a few lines.
That's really interesting, because a lot of the time, particularly when we do the American shows, people will pick up one of our sort of classic books and will flick through it and will put it down because it's not in colour.
Yeah.
And they don't read black and white.
That's right, yeah.
You just picked up Halo Jones. You just picked up Case Files number 5. These are the best comics you'll read, but no colour, no read.
It's like people won't watch black and white films anymore, don't they?
Yeah. Well, there was that horrible
fools.
There was that horrible phase when Turner, Turner, colourised loads and loads of black and white films in the 70s. Yeah. And George Lucas testified before Congress, I think, or something like that, to say how this was vandalism and how you shouldn't tinker with something.
Yeah.
Ironically, told the American government it shouldn't tinker with works of art after they've been released.
Because there's a similar story about because the colorisation process as well. If you take the colour out again, the black and white looks terrible. Yeah. But they colorised Laurel and Hardy films. And they asked Hal Roach what he thought of it. He said, "Don't make them no funnier."
Brilliant. I wanted to talk about Toxic.
Yeah.
Because I remember as a young 2000 AD fan, Toxic was like a bolt from the blue. It was completely unexpected. I'd never experienced comics like it, even reading 2000 AD. How did you come to be involved? Because it was a creator-driven thing. How did you come to be involved in Toxic?
Is it Jeff Thingy? the guy who published it. I can't remember his second name. He just asked us all for a meeting. So there's John and Alan and Pat and me and Kevin. I don't know if there's anyone else there. But so that's how that started. And he was going to put all this money into it and all the rest of it. But I didn't enjoy it at all, really. Right. I didn't like the strip I was doing.
Mutomaniac.
Yeah, I didn't like that. It sounded like a good idea, but I didn't enjoy it. And especially when in the rest of the comic, it was like, I felt like a bit of a throwback, actually.
Right.
Because the other stuff was so wild.
Yeah, you had Will Simpson and who was doing Pat Mills's, what's it called, Sex Warrior.
Yeah, it was like really mad stuff. So and what I was doing, I thought this is like really. I feel like I'm working on the sort of Bean or something. But anyway, I couldn't keep up with the pace because I was supposed to do 6 pages a week colour, so. I could manage 3. That's why it kept being split out, and in the end, I just stopped because the people weren't getting paid. So I stopped. I didn't do that.
I mean, one of the reasons why certainly that's been cited for Toxic starting up was the lack of royalties that were being paid at the time to creators and the lack of sort of creative control. Was that something that you felt passionate about at the time, or
not really? No.
Okay.
No, I mean, you can either sort of worry about things like that and not get much work done because it's hard if you're going to feel bitter about things. It's hard to do work. Right. You can't think I'm doing this work and I'm not going to get bloody paid for it and all the rest of it. So I mean, it would have been nice to own something that you got proper royalties on, but at the same time you think, well, IPC, or it was the IPC at the time of Fleetway, but they've got all the distribution set up. They're going to sell far more comics than we are.
Yeah.
So where are you going to get all the money from? Because unless you're doing something, you think, oh, this is really good, and I own it. And in 5 years, someone might want to make a film of it, and it'll be reprinted and all the rest of it. But the thing I was doing would never see the light of day again. So there's that as well. So, and I think because I mean we own The Last American, but it's been reprinted once. People are all saying they're going to make a film of it. Well, it hasn't been a film, has there? So
not that I'm aware of.
No. So you own something, but it doesn't make anything like the money that I make from working for hire companies, really. Unless you've got something that you really is a personal thing that you really believe in, I find it hard to be motivated, to be honest, because I think, well, I own this, yeah, but it's no good. What's the point of owning something that's no good?
Right, okay.
I mean, I suppose that the Mute I made that, if I had another artist, might have been much better, but I didn't enjoy it, like I said.
I mean, not long after Toxic went the way of All Flesh, you actually came back to Judge Dredd with Howler, with a radically different from the last time you'd been in the pages of 2000 AD.
Yeah,
it was radically different. Was that a consequence of having worked on things like The Last American and Mutomaniac, or was it again this sense of, well, I need to move on, I need to change my direction?
Well, I think I've been doing in between this stuff. I've been doing designs for films,
right? And
they'd become the way I was drawing those things was very spare, and that kind of carried on into the comic then, really, because so it wasn't like a leap from one comic style to another one. There was this other work in between, and I just like the idea of just doing things as no shadow, no black, see if I can make it work. So because if it was, I did do one strip in black and white like that. Was a yearbook about the Mean Machine.
Right.
I'm still really happy with that. But it's the same principle. But although I did spot a few blacks in that, but with the Howler, I thought, well, I'm not going to put any blacks in. I'm just going to, because I had this weird way of using markers that make it look all textured and what have you. So, and I thought it worked right. The only thing I didn't like what I did about it was I should have put proper gutters between the panels.
Right.
It was such minutiae, haunt us to the grave, don't they? I thought I'll be on my deathbed thinking, damn, I wish I'd put proper gutters on the Howler.
It was a strip that I mean, this is something that's entered 2000 AD lore. It was a strip that divided the readership because a lot of people were expecting the Mick Mcmahon that they'd been reading back in the early 80s to suddenly magically reappear, but you'd moved far beyond that point.
Well, it's lucky for me, I suppose, that I was never aware of that.
Right.
Because I by then I'd more or less stopped going to conventions and things, so I wasn't aware of anything like that. Because with that sort of, if I'd known that, if there was this expectation, I probably wouldn't have been able to do anything at all. It just froze. So it was just the way I was doing it. I didn't think anything, really. And I mean, I would have thought because David Bishop was the editor then. I mean, I thought if it wasn't what he wanted, he'd say so. So. Or would he? That's the thing. Because then you think, well, I'm supposed to be the great Mike McMahon. Is he too frightened to say, this is rubbish? I don't know. That's the problem. You get to a point where everything gets a bit mixed up. Really, you think, well. Because I was at the point where I did say to him, because I phoned him. Actually, I got in touch with him about doing that. I think because I said, "Oh, the days are gone where you get in touch with me. I'm now having to get in touch with you." So I thought I'm on the way down now. So, like I said, then you do a bit of it, and you think, well, does he like it? But you can't really ask him. I suppose you could ask him, but I mean, then it puts him on the spot. So it gets a bit awkward, doesn't it?
The thing is, with the style on Howler, despite all your uncertainty about, whether your choice is the correct ones and your confidence in your art, it does betray a certain degree of confidence that you would come back with such a bold change. Because I'm sure there are artists who in that situation would come back and try and do the same thing.
Because of the way my work has evolved, I couldn't do it the other way.
Right.
I mean, a man did a book. What was it? I think it was one of the first things about Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Was it the mega history?
That's the one. Yeah. Because I did the cover for it. It was a Mean Machine.
Yeah.
Now he said, "I want the cover to look like it," and I delivered it by hand because he lived in He was working in Harpington, and I was living in Dunstable, so I just drove down there. It was great. He gave me the check over as soon as like one hand. But he looked at it. and goes, "Oh yeah," it says it's not quite what I had, but what was he going to do? But I tried, but I couldn't do it. So it's not that I thought, I'm throwing all that out. It's just I couldn't do it. Whereas now I've evolved to the point where I could do it.
Right. Okay.
It's strange, it's weird, isn't it? Really.
Well,
I can't believe I haven't gone mad.
Tattered Banners.
Yeah.
Which story discontented social worker Curtis Banner. Now, that sounds like a wonderfully British premise for a story.
Yes.
But
it was Keith Giffen.
Yeah.
Yes.
But in terms of your style, I mean, this was, you're knocking on into the kind of Howler territory.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, was it after I did the Howler or before? This is these are the lost years. Yeah. I don't know. I can't remember. Between sort of 90 and 2000, I think it's all a bit vague. Nothing to do with drugs, I think. No, but that style evolved quite quickly through that, because it started off quite. I like the artwork on that actually, at the beginning, especially the start of it. But that's quite angular to start with. But at the end, it's a lot of curves in it.
Yeah,
it's changed quite a bit. But yeah, I sort of enjoyed that. So it was cancelled halfway through, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I got a call from I can't remember his name now. Art Young, I think it was. It was because he was working. He had an office in London, DC office in London, and he said, "We're thinking of cancelling this book. What do you think?" Because Keith wasn't sending in the scripts or something. So I said, "Well, if I've got something else to do, I don't mind." And he said, "Yeah, I've got loads of work for you." So I said, "Well, fine then." So he cancelled it. And I said, "What you got for me?" He says, "Nothing." But anyway, a few years later, they thought to revive it. Actually, what made it difficult though was because I'd been getting paid in advance,
right?
And so I'd already been paid for about 6 pages of it. So I had to start this book again, drawing pages I'd been paid for like 2 years or 3 years before.
Ouch.
So, but anyway, I got it done in the end. I drew that in 96, 97.
Oh, is it that late?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Because we'd moved to Yorkshire by then, because I remember I was sitting in my studio in Yorkshire and doing that. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it must have been after the Howler. Because I know, because I used to deliver the Howler pages to the office, which I couldn't have done from Yorkshire.
No.
Although when I did Sonic the Comic stuff, I sometimes delivered them when they were so late.
Oh, really?
But just show willing, I'll drive down.
Terribly sorry. There you go.
There you go. There's pages.
Have you thought about? I mean, you mentioned about being able to go back to your old style and reproduce it. Is that what you're going to do? You're going to try and reproduce?
Well, no, because my current way of drawing is similar to that, but not the same.
Right, okay.
So it's a bit spidery lines and big fat pens filling in with blacks and things, but it's not careful at all, really. It's much more, it's much looser. Because I find having to draw a line that's, like... goes along and there's never a wobble.
Yeah,
I've been doing that for a couple of years now, and that's driving me mad as well. So.
Well, you did that ABC Warriors story. I mean, this is a good long while back, where it seemed to be a kind of mix of two styles between your kind of Last American, the sparse line stuff.
Was that the tripod stuff?
Yeah. And but that much more detail. Harking back to like Block Mania.
Yeah, that because I think that was a story where I thought I shall eschew the howler thing. I mean, I'm not impervious to that. I mean, someone said Picasso with a broken arm. So, but I thought I had been going that way a bit anyway because I'd done some more design work, which had involved a bit. Slightly more detailed kind of drawing. So I thought that I would because I'd got a computer by then.
Yeah.
So what I was able to do was do the pencils and print them out and ink on that.
Right.
So I could experiment without losing the pencils.
I get you.
So I was able then to sort of combine that kind of. I was pleased with that. Yeah, there was a lot of black in that, a lot of shadows, a lot of detail.
Yeah.
But yeah, it wasn't as what would be the word? I can't think of the word now. Obsessive as trying to draw the ABC Warriors was, because that wasn't relaxed, but that. The first ABC Warriors wasn't relaxed, or Ro-Busters, but that ABC Warriors tripod story was. I was much more confident about that one.
Sonic the Comic,
yeah.
Which is not where I think anybody thought Mick Mcmahon would end up drawing for, but you did that for quite a while, didn't you?
A couple of years, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was. I didn't have anything else to do at the time, and then I got a call from Deborah Tate, and she had to do a sort of test piece, but no, I enjoyed doing that, and it was nice, easy work. You could. I'll come on a lot on that as well, because that's where I started using like lettering pens.
Yeah.
So you have like thick and thin lines, which I'd always been tried to avoid before because it's a bit like a brush, because me and brushes don't mix.
Right.
But because I used to try and work with brush and it's terrible. Club handy. But no, I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed the colouring as well, and it paid quite well. And
because that's I think it was Richard Elson as well.
Yeah, he used
to do a lot.
Yeah.
And that's a comic that inspired quite a lot of fans to keep, because it was resurrected by the fans at one point, I think.
Was it?
Yeah,
I know there's a huge wiki page.
Yeah.
So.
I mean,
so I've read some terrible things about me on it as well. That was when I used to read about myself on the internet.
Always a bad idea.
So I learned my lesson.
Yeah. It like I said, it seems an odd place for you to end up.
Yeah, it would, wouldn't it? Yeah, because I think because I started off doing Decap Attack, which was written by Nigel Kitchen.
Yeah.
And those were really nice little scripts. They're beautiful little stories, and they're nice characters. And he'd set it in medieval times or whatever, and it used to be lovely things to draw. Actually, Sonic himself, I wasn't, it was okay, but I mean, it didn't really hold my interest because it's not a character I really liked.
Yeah.
So I've always preferred Mario. So.
This was the time that you started using
computer. Yeah, because I started doing Sonic with a computer, and because I inked this story, and I was determined it wasn't going to look like all those other horrible comics that are coloured with Photoshop, where they just get a bit of airbrush.
Yeah.
And they look so thin and weedy, like. And so I spent ages doing this. I'm going to work out a way to make it look like the way I colour with markers.
Yeah.
And the first go was a bit of a naff attempt, but after that I thought it was working all right. And I've actually got my computer colouring to the point now where it doesn't look like computer colouring at all.
Right. Okay.
So I'm pretty pleased with that.
Is it? Does it look more like when you're using markers? Have you?
Yeah, it's like a computer sort of markers and paint. It looks like.
Right. Okay.
Mind you, there's. I mean, if you look on the internet, there's concept art that looks like it's done by Canaletto or something. It's all done on computers, isn't it? It's just wonderful what I can do. So, but my yardstick was just comic colouring. I wasn't going to try and compete with the fellas that do that good stuff. So,
do you still work traditionally?
Yeah, I did try inking with the Manga Studio, and I suppose if I bought a Cintiq or something, it might be different. But I've just gone back to drawing on paper, and it's much better. I think it's much quicker for me anyway. And it's easier to correct things. Because what I found was I do a lot, just one line.
Yeah.
And I think, that's not good, is it? To undo. For
somebody who has issues,
it's fatal.
Yeah,
it's fatal.
Just never get it right.
Colouring's all right.
Yeah.
Colouring fine, but not drawing. No. It's just...
I mean, it's cropped up a couple of times now where you've talked about films that you've worked on, and you've also worked on computer games. How has that evolved? How did you get into that in the first place? Was there a project where that kicked it all off?
Well, I don't think I've ever. I certainly haven't got a name as someone who does that, so I don't get any work on the strength of work I've done.
Okay.
Other than comics, that's how I get that work. I mean, the first was in what was I drawing at the time? Still drawing Judge Dredd, I think, first time around, but there was a sort of science fiction cartoon. I started doing some designs for that, but that was just like a pitch, so it wasn't going to be real. So it wasn't made, as most of them aren't. It would have been a good film, but then the guy from that, one of the guys from that, he was going to be directing one of the films on the BBC Bible animation series, Testament it was called.
Okay, yeah.
And so I worked on the Elijah one, so I designed all the characters for that. And they animated it in my style, which was really weird. But it looked good, but at the same time it's a bit disconcerting.
Yeah.
I don't remember drawing that. And then same guy again, I did designed a load of characters for a film about the New Testament. Then actually got some work with ComX, who wanted a lot of concept work done for a game they were going to do all the concept work for Sony. So I did that with two other artists whose names escape me because I'm trying to remember so many names this afternoon. I probably might think of them in a minute. And following on from that, I thought this is great, working in computer games like this, because we used to go and visit the studio where they'd make the game, I'd talk to the animators and stuff like that, and I thought, I like this. So I wrote sent a CD into Climax Games in Brighton to see if they wanted any concept. And they gave me a job as an artist, but actually I was an environment artist there. They trained me how to use 3D stuff.
So, right, okay.
So I did the Egyptian environment. Who would have thought an Egyptian environment in a racing game? But I did that, and then I got made redundant from there. I worked on 2 games then, and made redundant. And so I was offered a job then, because all these people move on. So there was another place of people I'd worked with had gone to work in Croydon at Razorback Studios. So they were doing a game, Warhammer, for the N-Gage, for the phone that time forgot.
Yeah.
And that was great. They worked on that, and then they did another game, the Shaolin Showdown.
Oh yeah.
So I did sort of environments for that, and got made redundant from there.
I'm sensing a pattern.
Yeah. It's a precarious business, games. Well, despite their best efforts, they come to a point where they've got no project. So people got to go, and so then I got a call to go and work in Brighton again at Kuju Studios. They were going to do a game because Guitar Hero had come out, so they were going to do one based on drums. Right. So I had to design these drummers and environments where they play their drums.
Yeah.
Got made redundant from there for about 5 months. And so that's when what did I do then, actually? I'm trying to think what happened then. Oh, no, that's when I did Tank Girl.
Right.
That's what I did next. I messed about for a couple of months. And then trying to get some more work in games. I mean, it is nice if you're self-employed all the time. The idea of being able to sit there and think, I can't think of a bloody thing for this, and think, but I'm still getting paid. It just makes such a nice change, rather than thinking, I've lost 3 days, I'm not getting paid, But so I thought, but no, 3 redundancies in sort of 4.5 years is a bit too much. So I thought I'll go and do comics again. So that's when I did Tank Girl. But I did Tank Girl because when I've been working in games, I've been just using Photoshop all day really. So I worked out some nice ways to use that for colour and to mess about with pencils.
What effect did that have on your style?
Well, it made it a bit more, brought it back to being a bit more realistic.
Yeah.
I think because the games I worked on were quite stylised, but at the same time they've got all realistic lighting, don't they, and stuff like that. So, which is weird about games. I mean, they can obviously look like anything, and yet they all look the same now. Really, they do, don't they?
Yeah.
You get like the odd independent game that's very quirky and what have you, but no, most of them they just want to look real. Mind you, that's what people like. I think I remember when I worked in Lions Corner House on a Saturday, and I told that because they knew I was doing. I said I've got an interview at the art school. Oh, can we see what you do? So I brought my portfolio into Lions Corner House, and all the comments I didn't want to know, but it was I copied a photograph of of all things, an American anti-tank gun crew in the Philippines or something. But because I copied the photograph, they go, "Oh, that's a nice one." Because it looked real, see? That's what people like.
Yeah.
So actually, all this time I've spent not doing realistic stuff. I'm a fool to myself. People don't like it, and I know that. I've learned that when I was 15. I was when that happened. 16. Yeah, but anyway, that's what it did. Though it became a lot more sort of realistic. Well, in as much as what I do could be called realistic.
But then you come on to something like Tank Girl, where realism is not necessarily the
I shouldn't really have done that. Tank Girl. So,
really?
No, it was. I didn't really fit on that, but I stuck at it. I finished it. So. But no, it was. I think I wasn't tuned into the character at all, really.
Right. It seems an odd fit.
I think by then, I at that stage anyway, I was more. Or maybe I am now, more illustrative rather than narrative. I mean, the storytelling was still there, but I think I had one of those Zen moments or something where you can. I think that's why with Sonic, because I could draw. I thought, well, I'm just enjoying drawing, rather than worrying about what I'm drawing. Or is it a good story, or I can now just draw. And draw it well enough for it to be acceptable. So.
How did you come to be working on Tank Girl?
I think it was through who was it? I got a call from Titan
Right.
And they said, "Do you want to draw a tank?" Because I hadn't got anything else to do. See, this is my another thing like that. Because I should say, well, hang on, have a think. Just think. But I just said, "Yeah, I'll do that." Because I mean, I like tank, but I didn't realise that when it's drawn by me, I wouldn't like it. Because I mean, Jamie Hewlett, the way he's just wonderful. So maybe I had that hanging over me as well. But they did want a new tank. That was the problem as well. That they wanted it to look different, completely different.
Yeah.
And it started off looking completely different, and then they lost their nerve and said, "Oh, can you put a plaster on her face?" Because to start off, she didn't have a plaster on her face.
Right. Okay. Seems a random.
She just looked like a blonde girl.
Right. I get you. Okay. Alien Legion.
Ah, yeah, the Alien Legion. That's Chuck Dixon again. So
Yeah.
I like Chuck.
Now, that's a subject in a book that seems to perfectly suit the kind of style that you had at the time, especially.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I got that because I was in hospital, and I got a letter in hospital from Carl. God, forgive me, I can't remember his name. The guy that started Alien Legion, Carl. You have to look it up. No. Anyway, I got a letter from him,
right.
and I wrote back to him. Said, "Yeah," because he wasn't actually asking me to do that then, but that's how we got in touch with each other. So I suppose he sent me a fan letter, really.
Okay.
Carl Potts,
right?
Got there, and just checked the Alzheimer meter, the old timers, and. So we had been in touch. So he then, when the opportunity arose, he said, "Do you want to draw this book?" So I said, "Yeah, lovely," and I really enjoyed it. But I got really late with that and drew the bulk of it in about 3 days.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think it did about 30 pages in 3 days.
Wow.
With my wife doing the colouring, with a lot of the colouring, so, under my strict supervision.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But we got it done, so, and it was a good book. I enjoyed it. I still like looking at it. So, and it was a good story because Chuck Dixon he writes. If he was a writer for Hollywood, he'd be writing 50s westerns.
Right.
With I don't know, James Stewart. The proper westerns, sort of fillers, but because he can write that kind of stuff. Good characters, good plots, and good dialogue. It's not trying to change the world, just a bit entertaining. So that worked out all right. That I was pleased with that.
In terms of looking back on your career, you talked a bit about how 2000 AD is a fundamental part of that, whether it's sort of front and centre or part of the background. And we've talked about how your level of confidence in your abilities has waxed and waned.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you now?
I'm really confident now.
All right.
I am. Yes, I am. I finally got there. No, I can. I'm really happy with my work now because I think I could draw anything.
Okay.
Because that's what I was saying about the sort of Zen thing. Because that's what I learned on Sonic. Because when I was 25, if someone said, "Do you want to draw Sonic a comic?" I go, "Oh, I'm not drawing that. What do you think I am?" That sort of snottiness you've got when you're young and full of yourself. But now I could put my mind to anything, really, and get something out of it. I've learned something because I think that's what I was trying to express really when I'm saying things get formulaic. You don't stretch yourself anymore. You don't try and do something not clever, but something you thought you couldn't do. It's something as simple as drawing someone from sort of 3/4 of you from behind them, which you tend to avoid because it's not an easy thing to do. Because people, unless you know what you're doing, so if you draw a full-on face, everyone knows what a face looks like, so they just don't even think about it. Think, "Oh, it's his face." But if you draw something from a really odd angle, it's got to be really well drawn, or people they'll think, what's that? You know, because I remember seeing when I first saw Richard Corbin, his colour work he used to do, and because it was very photorealistic, and he'd done a drawing of a fist, a close up of a fist, but it was so lifelike it didn't look like a fist anymore, because you think, a fist don't look like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of a you got to make things recognisable, really. I mean, he's turned into a wonderful artist. He has that his Hellboy Mexico stuff. You seen that? It's just superb. So I mean, that's what I've managed to do as well. Because I used to think, if I looked at a comic and I thought that's no good, right? And I feel really pleased about myself, or I'd look at it and go, oh Christ, how can he do that? How old is he? You know, it's like, so it's either one thing or the other. But now I've got over that, and I can just enjoy good stuff and, you know, look at other stuff and think, well, you know, one look at that. See?
You used the word struggle earlier. I presume that this Zen moment is that it's not as much of a struggle as it used to be.
No, it's not. Well, it isn't. It isn't. It depends what. If I get on a roll, right, I know things will be okay, and they won't be like before. They won't just dissolve into disinterest. I will be able to sort of make it better as I go along. But the initial thing to start things now is just as hard as it ever was, I think. But that doesn't put me off anymore. Now like I said, I'm much more confident about getting things off the ground.
Do you think that's a consequence of working in away from comics in movies and games, that it's a different kind of environment where you're not necessarily playing catch up with yourself constantly? There's not that drive to get the pages out.
Not really. No, it's all, you know. It's about OCD, I suppose. Because like I said, when I was a child, I started to think all the time about drawing, about doing art, and that's all I've ever thought. I mean, the idea that even if I worked at something completely different, I would still think I was an artist. Yeah. So all the things that go on in my head are about being an artist, and think. I mean, I think I put a post on my blog about it, where I was at a football match and I saw a man was standing on the touchline and he had a white hoop around his tracksuit bottom, and he'd stood in such a way that it just was sort of conjoined with the sideline.
Right.
And I was just fascinated by that, you know, like. So all the time I'm looking at things. Although a lot of the time I think, oh God, no wonder I can't draw. Look, that's what a nose looks like. but it's all the time. See, it's constant.
Yeah. Well, you questioned whether you had a career, but everything that you've said suggests that you're more akin to having a vocation than necessarily a job. That this is such an intrinsic part of you and how you view the world.
Yeah. That
of course it doesn't seem like a career because it's natural.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah,
to the way you view the world.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what it is. Is it an obsession? I don't know. I suppose it is. Is it? I don't know. It's just what I am. You know, it's hard. I couldn't not be like that.
Yeah.
It has to be conscious. Even with conscious effort wouldn't stop it, I don't think.
Looking back to that 22-year-old kid who was drawing Judge Dredd, unbeknownst as to what Judge Dredd was and was going to be, how do you feel about that? About that? How do you feel about the journey that you've made? The how far you've come and evolved?
Well, I don't actually feel I've moved on at all, really.
Okay.
It's being in the same place, doing the same thing, but slightly differently. God, it sounds terrible, isn't it? It's just going to hang myself when you've gone.
Please don't.
But that's what it is, though. It's not. I don't feel like I've moved anywhere really. I'm just still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Really, that's what it is. I think. I certainly don't. I never look at things I've done or work I've done and think, oh, I should have done it that way. Because I can see good things and bad things in everything. Because I can remember what I was trying to do when I drew these things. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And because there's so much of it, well, there used to be, but it doesn't really matter because the first line is because I did get to one point where I couldn't make a single remark without it thinking, oh, that's no good. Whereas obviously, because once you've drawn a whole page, there's no one, even I wouldn't notice it anymore.
Yeah.
So.
But the introduction that you did to the collected Last American a number of years ago.
Oh, wow, yeah. Stream of consciousness.
Yeah, I mean, it's dripping with self-doubt.
Yeah, it is, yeah. Well, that I had such a lot of trouble with that. Well, see, the thing about that was because I'd been off sick for about 3 years or so. So it was the first thing I was doing. Because before that, I'd done Slate.
Right, yeah.
And now I'm doing this. And I thought Sláine was really, really good. I mean, there's bits about it I don't like now, but most of it, it's all right. And so I was thinking, well, I'm not going to draw it like Sláine, but I've got to get back to that peak that I was at, that. And so it really was difficult. I mean, by the end, it's like I always do. I mean, the first two books were, ink them on sheets of paper and ink them again on the paper through a light box, And but by the end, I was just penciling and inking on board, and it was much better by then as well. There's one couple of pages in there. I think the best thing I ever did. So obviously it was going all right.
Having been there at in Prog 2, to now be at Prog 2000, what's been your reaction to that?
Well, to me, 2000 AD now is just part of Britain, really. It's there, it's like it's perhaps it'll always be there now, I don't know, but because I mean when it started I didn't even think, is this going to last? And I just wanted to do some work, and the fact that it's gone on for so long is to me it's just like sort of Coronation Street or something. It's got a loyal core of people who read it, and and the work can be reprinted and all the rest of it, and it's just like it's got a life of its own. Really. So because I don't like or dislike it, or it's just there. I used to have, when I first started, I suppose I had an emotional attachment to it, but. I haven't felt that for a long time.
Okay.
I mean, I'm glad it's still there. But I mean, it's just because I find that if I did when I worked with Archie Goodwin, I thought, oh, I'm doing something I always wanted to do, and yet I still had the same problems. That didn't make any difference. You still got a white sheet of paper in front of you. Yeah. And so that's the thing. I mean, if it's whatever you're doing, whoever it's for, whether it's something you're really keen on or whatever, you still got the same thing. But that's why I was found with conventions, actually, that people were slapping you on the back and buying you a drink. On a Monday morning, you still got a white sheet of paper to fill in. So it hasn't helped.
Yeah. And I guess it's been such a fundamental part of your life for so long that it's wallpaper, it's a fundamental part of the structure of your world. It's like someone
you've known for a long time. You don't even know what they look like anymore, really. Well, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes you look at someone you've known for years and suddenly you see them, actually see them for once. And then you think, oh, yeah. And then you go back to what you were, being used to them.
Alert! Alert! Fill power levels dangerously high. Alert! Alert! Read 2000 AD every week. Ask your comic book store or newsagent now. Subscribe to the galaxy's greatest comic at 2000ADonline.com.